Hello, my friend, and welcome. Before we begin tonight, I invite you to prepare your space for rest. Find a position that feels soft and comfortable. If you can, dim the lights or turn them off completely so that the only glow you notice is the calm glow from your screen or the sound of my voice. I would love it if you could share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. It amazes me to think that this video can travel across oceans and time zones, reaching people in all corners of the world. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing. It helps the channel grow and ensures that more people can discover a place of rest, just like you have. My greatest wish is that you won't hear this video all the way through, because somewhere along the way, you'll drift into deep and restful sleep. That's the outcome I hope for every time. And if there's a particular subject or theme you'd like me to cover in future videos, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. Your suggestions mean so much. Now, allow yourself to relax and let's begin. You hear it first, the soft chime above our seats, followed by the captain's voice, warm and steady, announcing that we are beginning our descent into London. The overhead sign glows, and a faint hush passes through the cabin. Around us, people rustle with excitement, fastening seatbelts, tucking away bags, and leaning toward their windows for a glimpse of the land below. You and I glance at each other. It feels real now. After weeks of dreaming, we are finally here. Our backpacks rest beneath the seats, modest and dependable, ready to be slung over our shoulders the moment we step out into England's autumn air. Through the oval window, clouds peel away to reveal the green and golden patchwork of the countryside below. Fields stitched together like a quilt, hedgerows like tiny seams. Roads curve and glitter with the movement of cars, thin as threads from this height. Then the city appears, vast, sprawling, with the silver curve of the Thames snaking through it. The sight makes my breath catch. Even though it's just another landing, this is London. The plane tilts gently, engines humming. The wheels touch down with a soft jolt, and soon we are coasting along the runway. Outside, the sky is a pale October gray, streaked with hints of lavender, as though it too is waking from a dream. Heathrow greets us with a rush of sound, voices calling, luggage wheels clattering, the occasional announcement echoing above. But we keep close, moving step by step through the crowd until at last we step outside. The air here feels cool and damp, the kind that clings to your skin. Not unpleasant, but different, filled with the scent of rain on pavement, of jet fuel fading into the distance, of a city alive. Our backpacks settle onto our shoulders with familiar weight. We grin at each other, wordless but giddy. We're here together with the entire island ahead of us. The train from the airport takes us into the heart of the city. As we rattle along, we glimpse London's outskirts. Rows of terraced houses with red brick chimneys, parks edged with autumn leaves, corner shops with bright awnings. It feels both ordinary and magical, as though the city doesn't need to impress. It simply is. Soon we are walking, boots striking the pavement of London streets. Cars rush past in a blur of red double-decker buses and black cabs. People move quickly, coats wrapped tight, umbrellas tucked under arms. We walk slower, deliberately, savoring the way everything feels slightly oversized, slightly new. Hyde Park becomes our first stop. We enter through iron gates and find ourselves surrounded by wide lawns and ancient trees, their leaves turning amber and gold. The air is alive with the sound of pigeons and the distant bark of dogs. Joggers pass us by, and children chase each other near the Serpentine Lake. We don't need to do anything extraordinary here. It is enough just to wander, to sit for a while on a bench, to let the city's heartbeat reach us gently. From Hyde Park, we walk toward Buckingham Palace, not as tourists desperate for photographs, but as travelers, curious, unhurried. We stand at the edge of the gates, peering through the ironwork at the grand facade. Guards stand steady in their bright uniforms, their discipline both strange and impressive. The palace feels both untouchable and close, like something out of a storybook. We linger only a little before moving on, our steps carrying us further into the city. By late afternoon, we find ourselves along the south bank of the Thames. The river flows wide and slow, reflecting the shifting colors of the sky. Street performers gather here, filling the air with music and laughter. A man balances impossibly on one wheel of a bicycle. A woman strums her guitar and sings in a voice like honey. The air smells faintly of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. We lean on the railing, gazing at the water, watching boats glide past. Across the river, the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral rises, timeless and serene. As the sun dips low, the lights of the city flicker on. A necklace of golden lanterns strung across bridges, warm glows spilling from cafes and windows. The air grows colder, and we tug our jackets tighter, but it feels comforting too. We are not rushing. We are here to savor. Dinner comes from a simple stall, steaming paper cartons of fish and chips that we share while sitting on the stone steps near the river. The food is hot, salty, delicious, and the grease leaves faint marks on our fingers. We laugh at how messy it is, wiping our hands on napkins that flutter in the wind. It feels like exactly the right meal for a pair of travelers who care more for the moment than for elegance. The evening draws on, and fatigue begins to tug at us. Our backpacks feel heavier with every step. We wander away from the river, through quieter streets, until we find the small hostel where we've booked our bunks. The building is modest, tucked between shops, with a painted sign that creaks faintly in the breeze. Inside, the air smells of tea and old wood. We check in, climb the narrow stairs, and find our room. Rows of bunks with crisp sheets, a window cracked open to let in the cool air. We place our backpacks at the foot of the beds and sit for a moment, shoulders aching, hearts full. Outside, London hums with life, but inside, the world grows soft. We crawl beneath our blankets, close our eyes, and let the sounds of the city, distant bells, faint footsteps, the hush of the wind, lull us to sleep. Tomorrow will bring a new place, a new adventure. But tonight, we rest, safe and content, in the heart of London. The morning begins softly, with the faint rustle of bunk beds around us. The hostel in London is stirring zippers being tugged shut, footsteps creaking across old wooden floors, whispers of travelers already heading out on their own adventures. I glance toward you with a quiet smile, the kind shared between companions at the start of a journey. Today is our first real day of travel, and London, with all its grand weight and history, already feels like the launching point. Our backpacks sit ready at our feet, straps warm but dependable. We sling them over our shoulders, exchange a look that says let's go, and step out into the cool, amber-tinged air of an autumn morning in England. The city feels different at this hour. The streets are less crowded, though the distant growl of buses and the clatter of bicycles still give it life. The autumn air has that faint dampness to it, a reminder that London is never too far from a drizzle, though today the clouds are pale and promising. We make our way to the station, the world's most ordinary errand, catching a bus. But in the context of backpacking, it feels like part of the adventure. The coach station is filled with the smell of coffee from a nearby stall and the low hum of travelers speaking a dozen different languages. We choose the cheapest tickets, a budget bus heading west toward Oxford. The ride isn't glamorous thin seats, a faint rattle of the engine, but it suits us. Through the window, the cityscape begins to melt away, buildings thinning into clusters of suburban homes, then giving way to fields edged with hedgerows. Autumn is everywhere. Trees with copper leaves that look like they've been dipped in fire, fields of stubble after harvest, crows gathering on fence posts. The bus winds its way into Oxford by mid-morning. When we step out, the city greets us with a sense of stillness, as though the centuries themselves are breathing here. The city of dreaming spires, they call it, and almost instantly the name makes sense. Above us rise towers and steeples, each shaped with care hundreds of years ago. Carved from the pale honey-colored stone, it glows warmly, even beneath the shifting light of autumn. The streets are cobbled in places, uneven under our boots, and the air carries the crisp smell of fallen leaves mingled with wood smoke. We wander slowly, deliberately. There's no rush. That's the gift of traveling this way, with nothing but time and a backpack. Students in long coats cycle past us, scarves trailing in the breeze. Old bookshops beckon from crooked doorways, their windows filled with weathered spines and curling paper signs. The colleges, ancient and quiet, stand behind iron gates and ivy-clad walls. We pause outside the Bodleian Library, its great carved doorway looking more like a portal to another world than simply a place to read. Standing there, in that moment, we both feel it. How deeply water and stone and human imagination have shaped this city. By midday, the autumn sun has climbed just high enough to soften the chill. We buy simple sandwiches from a bakery, thick bread, cheese, and a scattering of pickles, and eat them on a bench near the River Cherwell. The water glides past, slow and silvery, carrying with it drifting leaves that spin like tiny boats. A group of students punt lazily down the river, laughter floating across the air. It feels timeless, as if Oxford has looked this way for centuries, and in some sense, it has. But our journey isn't meant to linger too long in one place. By mid-afternoon, we shoulder our packs once more and make our way toward the countryside. A short bus ride takes us away from the city streets, out into the open sweep of fields and hills that belong to the Cotswolds. Almost immediately, the landscape changes. The houses grow smaller and older, their walls built from the region's distinctive golden limestone. The villages look like something out of a storybook, each cottage with sloping roofs and climbing ivy, smoke curling from chimneys as if painted by hand. Walking through these villages in autumn feels like stepping into a painting. The stone glows with a warm, buttery light that seems to deepen as the sun sinks lower in the sky. Gardens overflow with the last bursts of color, roses fading, holly berries bright against dark green leaves. The narrow lanes curve gently, leading past low stone walls topped with moss. There's a stillness here, a hush, as if the whole countryside is holding its breath in preparation for winter. We follow a trail out of one village and into the rolling hills beyond. The fields are patched with shades of gold, green, and russet, hedgerows tracing the land like veins. Sheep graze quietly in the distance, their white coats glowing faintly in the evening light. The path climbs gently, and from the top of a hill, the view stretches wide. Valleys filled with mist, cottages tucked into folds of the earth, and beyond it all, the slow descent of the sun into a horizon streaked with rose and violet. As the evening deepens, we choose a meadow near the edge of a small copse of trees to camp for the night. It feels safe, quiet, and most importantly, free. The grass is damp but soft, and the air is laced with the faint scent of wood smoke drifting from a nearby farmhouse. We pitch the small tent together, the rhythm of it comforting stakes pressed into earth, poles rising, fabric stretched taut. Once it's secure, we sit outside for a while, wrapped in jackets and scarves, watching the sky deepen into navy blue. The stars appear one by one, hesitant at first, then boldly filling the sky. Out here, away from the glare of cities, the heavens reveal themselves in full. The Milky Way stretches faintly above us, a shimmering path. The night air is crisp, each breath visible in the cool. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. The quiet is profound, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. We share a simple meal, bread, cheese, and an apple, each eaten with fingers and laughter. There's a sweetness in its simplicity. No restaurants, no fine dining, just the satisfaction of food after a long day of walking. When we finally crawl into the tent, the warmth of sleeping bags wrapping around us, we feel both tired and whole. The earth beneath us, the sky above us, the gentle hush of the English countryside surrounding us. It feels like belonging. Sleep comes slowly, not from exhaustion, but from peace. As we close our eyes, the last sound we hear is the whisper of leaves moving in the breeze, and the knowledge that tomorrow, another road, another day, awaits. Morning arrives softly, the pale light of dawn slipping into our little tent in the meadow. The air is cool, the kind of cool that makes your breath visible in little wisps, but it isn't uncomfortable. It's the kind of cool that tells you autumn is awake before the world is. We unzip the flap of the tent, and the countryside greets us. Dew shining like tiny gems across the grass, hedgerows heavy with berries, the faint sound of crows calling from the distance. There's a stillness here, broken only by the rhythmic swish of branches stirring in the wind. Packing up the tent is almost meditative. The poles fold away, the fabric rolls tight, and soon everything is back on our shoulders again. Our backpacks feel heavy for the first few minutes, but after a while, they simply become part of us, a rhythm to the body. We walk toward the road, hitching a ride from a kind local farmer who's heading toward the main town. His accent is thick, his humor quick, and as he drops us off near the bus stop, he waves with the warmth of someone used to seeing strangers pass through. That's part of backpacking, relying on the small kindness of others. By mid-morning, we arrive in Stratford-upon-Avon, the famous birthplace of William Shakespeare. The little market town sits quietly by the River Avon, and it feels as if time has deliberately slowed here. Narrow streets are lined with timber houses, their black and white beams leaning ever so slightly with age. Windows are small, some with lidded glass panes that glint in the pale sunlight. There's a smell in the air of bread baking and wood smoke, a combination that seems eternal. We wander toward Shakespeare's birthplace, the house where he first drew breath in 1564. From the outside, it looks humble. Timber walls, steep gables, and a small front garden edged with herbs. Yet there's a weight to it, as though centuries of footsteps and whispers have left an invisible trace. Inside, the rooms are dim, with low ceilings and wooden beams that creak underfoot. The hearth is blackened from old fires, and the furniture looks solid, simple, enduring. Standing in that space, it's easy to imagine a young boy growing up here, running through these rooms, not yet knowing that he would one day write words that would shape the world. Outside again, we stroll down the cobbled lanes. The town is alive with its own quiet rhythm. Shopkeepers opening doors, tourists taking photographs, locals crossing the bridge over the River Avon. The water is calm, a ribbon of silver winding its way past weeping willows and stone banks. Ducks gather near the edge, their feathers flashing green and brown in the sun. We pause to watch swans glide across the surface, their long necks bowing gracefully as if they, too, are actors in a performance written long ago. It's near the riverbank that we decide to pause for lunch. We find a small market stall selling warm pastries, their flaky crusts filled with vegetables and meat. Along with an apple each, it makes for a simple but hearty picnic. We carry our food to the grassy bank and sit cross-legged, facing the slow-moving water. The breeze carries the scent of leaves and damp earth, and somewhere nearby, church bells begin to ring the hour. Eating there feels like part of a ritual, a way of sharing the same view Shakespeare himself must have looked upon countless times. After our picnic, we shoulder our packs once more and wander farther into the Warwickshire countryside. The transition is gradual. The neat lines of the town fade, and soon the landscape opens wide. Narrow lanes curve between stone walls, leading us past farms where sheep graze lazily. The hedgerows are alive with color, clusters of red berries, ivy climbing, and leaves turn every shade of amber and rust. Sometimes the path dips into a hollow where the air feels cooler, and sometimes it rises onto a ridge where we can see far across the rolling hills, patchworked in fields and woodlands. Walking here feels like moving through a poem. Every turn reveals something new. A lone oak tree standing proud in a field, a small stream bubbling under a mossy bridge, a cottage with smoke curling gently from its chimney. The air is filled with the scent of damp earth, apples from distant orchards, and occasionally the sweet tongue of hay being stored for winter. It is both deeply alive and profoundly still. As the afternoon wears on, the sun lowers, casting long shadows across the countryside. We stop to rest by a stile, perched on the wooden step as we sip from our water bottles. The world around us is hushed, save for the occasional call of a pheasant or the rustle of leaves tumbling along the path. The countryside in autumn has a way of slowing time, drawing out each moment, so it lingers on the skin like warmth from a fading fire. By early evening, we look for a place to make camp. Following a narrow lane bordered by hawthorn hedges, we find a quiet spot just beyond a small copse of trees. The field is open, flat enough for our tent, and far from the nearest farmhouse. It feels safe, secret, ours. We set down our packs and go about the familiar ritual of pitching camp. Tent poles click together, fabric stretches tight, and soon our little shelter stands ready against the dusk. The night falls quickly here, as if autumn is eager to show its darker face. The sky deepens from gold to purple, then to a velvet blue scattered with stars. The air turns colder, and we wrap ourselves in jackets and scarves. Dinner is simple again: bread, cheese, and perhaps a biscuit or two saved for earlier. But what it lacks in extravagance, it makes up for in the joy of shared simplicity. We sit in the quiet, listening to the sounds of night. In the distance, we hear the lowing of cattle, the faint rustle of wind through trees, and once or twice the eerie, beautiful call of an owl. The road nearby is silent now. No cars, just the endless stretch of countryside embracing us. As we settle into our sleeping bags, we feel both tired and content. Our bodies ache slightly from the miles walked, but it's the good kind of ache, a kind that tells you you've lived fully. The stars shimmer above, invisible from inside the tent, but somehow felt as though the canvas cannot keep them out. Sleep comes slowly in waves as the countryside holds us in its quiet arms. Tomorrow, we know, another road awaits, another discovery, another story written into our journey. But for now, all is still, all is safe, all is enough. The morning comes quietly, a thin veil of mist clinging to the hedgerows as we break down our little campsite near Warwickshire. The ground is cool beneath our boots, damp from dew, and the sky stretches above us in pale hues of rose and pearl. Today, we set our sights farther north, toward the rugged heart of England, to a place of heather-strewn hills, deep valleys, and stone walls It's seen to stitch the land together, the Peak District. We catch a modest bus out of town, one of those local routes that meanders through villages, with names that sound like they've leapt straight from old ballads, places ending in ton or ham, where rows of cottages lean close to narrow lanes. Along the way, fields flash by, squares of green bounded by hedgerows and dotted with sheep, their wool already thick in preparation for winter. The journey takes time, but that's the beauty of backpacking. We aren't in a hurry. Every bend in the road, every glimpse of a distant church spire feels like part of the unfolding story. By midday, the land around us begins to rise and grow wilder. Hills swell against the horizon, their slopes roughened by moors and grasslands. This is the Peak District, England's very first national park, founded in 1951. It's remarkable to think that the quiet valleys and windswept ridges we are about to walk were also the cradle of the modern conservation movement. This park exists because people fought for the right to roam, to walk freely across these ancient paths that had once been barred by landowners. Even before setting foot on the trails, you can sense it. This is a place that belongs to everyone. We step off the bus in a small town at the edge of the park. Bakewell, perhaps famous for its pudding. The streets are narrow, paved with cobbles, and lined with stone cottages built from honey-colored limestone. There's a market square where traders sell bread, cheese, and jams, and the air smells faintly of wood smoke drifting from chimneys. We stop briefly to share a Bakewell tart, its almond sweetness sticking to our lips, before tightening our straps and heading upward. The trail rises gently at first, winding between low stone walls that crisscross the countryside like patchwork scenes. These walls are centuries old, built without mortar, each stone carefully balanced on the next. They stretch across fields and hillsides, creating a sense of order in the wild expanse. Sheep graze on either side, lifting their heads to watch us pass before returning to the grass, unbothered by our presence. As we climb higher, the landscape changes. The gentle pastures give way to open moorland, where the ground is springy beneath our boots, covered with heather and bracken, turning copper in the autumn air. The wind picks up here, whistling across the ridges, carrying with it the scent of peat and the faint tongue of rain. Looking back, the view is breathtaking. Valleys unfurl behind us, dotted with farmhouses and crisscrossed by the glimmering threads of rivers. We pause often, partly to rest and partly because the scenery demands it. The Peak District has two distinct personalities: the softer limestone valleys of the White Peak and the darker, more dramatic gritstone edges of the Dark Peak. Here, on the ridge, we feel both at once. The gentle curve of hills meeting the sharp rise of cliffs that drop steeply into shadowed dales below. The gritstone outcrops are immense, weathered into strange shapes by centuries of wind and rain. Some look like toppled towers, others like tables set by giants. Standing beside them, you feel small, but also deeply connected to the timelessness of stone. We clamber up one of the edges, our boots finding purchase on the rough rock. And from the top, we see the world unfurl in every direction. The valleys glow in muted greens and golds, Streams flash like ribbons of light, and the sky stretches vast and unbroken above. Far off, a hawk wheels in circles, its wings tilting against the wind. Up here, silence reigns, broken only by the sound of air moving across the stone. By late afternoon, we descend into a sheltered valley where the ground flattens into meadows again. A small brook babbles nearby, clear water running over stones worn smooth by time. It feels like the right place to stop, to rest our legs and prepare our camp. We pitch the tent near the brook, close enough to hear its music, but far enough to keep dry. As the sun dips lower, the air cools, and we set about gathering what we need for a simple dinner. With the hiss of a small camp stove, we boil water for tea, the steam rising into the crisp evening air. Tonight's meal is nothing elaborate. Some pasta, a bit of cheese, a handful of vegetables we bought in town. But out here, beneath the open sky, it tastes like a feast. There's something about cooking outside that makes everything richer, as though the air itself is a spice added to the pot. After eating, we sit by the fading light, telling stories the way travelers always do, half memories, half imaginings, all softened by the crackle of leaves underfoot and the hum of the brook. The stars begin to prick the sky one by one, sharp and clear, without the interference of city lights. Soon the entire dome above us is glittering. The Milky Way stretched faintly across the darkness like a river of silver dust. The cold deepens, but we pull our jackets close and linger, unwilling to miss the spectacle. The fire is modest, just enough to warm our hands, but its glow feels like a shield against the vastness of the night. The sheep are quiet now, the hills dark shapes against the horizon, and the world feels both immense and intimately ours. When at last we crawl into the tent, the ground beneath us is firm. The brook sings softly, and the stars continue their silent watch. Sleep comes slowly, layered with the weight of the day's miles and the wonder of the ridges we've crossed. And in that drifting state between waking and dreaming, it feels as though the land itself is holding us its ancient stone, its flowing waters, its boundless sky, reminding us that we are only passing through, but welcome nonetheless. The morning sun slips through the thin fabric of our tent, pulling us gently awake. The brook beside our campsite is still singing, though softer now, as though the water is tired after its night-long performance. We emerge from the tent to find a cool breeze waiting for us, brushing against our faces and stirring the grasses that surround us. The day stretches ahead, filled with promise, for we are heading farther north to the Lake District, a place spoken of with reverence, almost like a spell. Lakes so calm they mirror the sky, mountains that hold the secrets of centuries, villages that seem carved out of storybooks. The journey there is an adventure in itself. We catch a bus heading north, the kind that rattles and sighs at every stop. At one point, an older man with a tweed cap and a thick accent sits across from us. He notices our backpacks and grins. "Headed for the fells, are you?" he asks. When we nod, he adds, "Best keep an eye out for the Herdwick sheep. Stubborn as anything. They'll stare you down if you get too close." He chuckles at his own joke, and we laugh with him tucking the image of a sheep glaring us into our memories. As the bus climbs into the heart of the Lake District, the landscape begins to transform. The hills grow higher, their slopes cloaked in green and purple heather. Valleys deepen, holding small stone villages within them like treasures. And then, there it is, our first glimpse of a lake. The water lies still and gleaming, catching the light like polished glass. Mountains rise on either side, their reflections so perfectly cast in the water that it feels like the world has doubled, one realm above and another below. We disembark at Ambleside, a charming village of slate-roofed cottages and winding lanes. The smell of fresh bread drifts from a bakery, and we wander inside for a small loaf, still warm in its paper bag. Provisions for later, I say, though we both sneak a bite right there in the street, flakes of crust tumbling onto our jackets. Backpacking might be low budget, but little indulgences like fresh bread or hot tea make all the difference. From Ambleside, we walk down toward Lake Windermere. It stretches long and narrow, flanked by wooded hills, its surface shimmering silver in the autumn light. A few rowing boats bob near the shore, their oars glinting. Without thinking twice, we decide to rent one, pooling together the last of our coins. It's not glamorous. Our boat creaks a little, and the oars splash more than they glide, but there's joy in the imperfection. You row for a while, pulling us steadily away from the shore, and then hand the oars over to me. My strokes zigzag us wildly, and we both laugh so hard that the boat rocks dangerously. Careful, you shout, clutching the sides, and for a moment, it feels like we might tip right into the cold lake. But we steady ourselves, laughter spilling over the water, echoing back from the hills. After rowing, we let the boat drift. We dangle our fingers into the lake, the water icy against our skin, and for a while, we simply float in silence. The stillness is immense, broken only by the occasional call of a bird overhead or the gentle slap of water against the boat's sides. Looking at the mountains mirrored in the lake, it feels as though we are caught between two worlds, the one above us and the one beneath, equally vast, equally beautiful. Back on shore, we find a quiet place to sit by the water's edge. The bread makes a simple lunch, paired with a wedge of cheese and some apples we've carried since yesterday. A duck waddles toward us, tilting its head hopefully. "Don't even think about it," I whisper, though of course we can't resist sharing a few crumbs. Soon more ducks appear, their bright eyes fixed on us, and we laugh at how quickly word seems to spread among them. "I think we've just opened the first duck cafe," you say, brushing crumbs from your lap. In the afternoon, we hike along one of the trails that leads upward into the fells. The path winds through forest first, the air damp with the smell of moss and earth, then climbs higher into open hills. Sheep dot the slopes, their wool thick and gray. At one point, a Herdwick sheep does indeed block the trail, staring us down with unblinking determination. We step carefully around it, trying not to laugh, but once we're past, the memory of the old man's warning sends us into fits of giggles. Higher up, the views open wide. Below us, The lake gleams like a shard of sky fallen to earth. Villages look like toy models, smoke curling from their chimneys. Above us, the clouds drift lazily, their shadows painting the hills in shifting patterns. The Lake District has long been a muse for poets and artists, and it's easy to see why. Wordsworth once wandered these very hills, writing of daffodils and wandering clouds. Beatrix Potter made these landscapes home to her beloved animals, Peter Rabbit and Jemima Puddle Duck. The thought that we are walking in their footsteps makes the trail feel even more enchanted. As evening falls, we descend into a small wooded clearing by the lake's edge. It seems like the perfect place to camp, sheltered by trees, soft ground beneath, the water close enough to hear its gentle lap against the shore. We pitch the tent as the last light fades and gather twigs for a modest fire. Dinner is another simple affair. Boiled pasta with scraps of vegetables, but the warmth of the food fills us as the night air cools. Soon the woods come alive with sound. An owl hoots somewhere above. It's called deep and steady, answered faintly from farther away. The rustle of small creatures stirs in the underbrush, but nothing comes too close. The lake reflects the rising moon, silver ripples gliding across its surface. We sit together by the fire, wrapped in jackets, speaking softly so as not to disturb the quiet magic of the place. When it's time to sleep, we curl into our sleeping bags inside the tent, the air crisp but comforting. The hoot of the owl continues, steady as a heartbeat. Beyond the canvas walls, the forest stands like a guardian, and the lake breathes softly. Slowly, steadily, sleep comes, wrapping us in its own reflection, until we drift into dreams as calm as the waters of Windermere. Morning comes with a chill that wakes us quicker than any alarm. The tent is damp with dew, and our breath forms clouds as we pack our things, the last of our bread tucked carefully away for the journey. Today, we set our sights farther north than we have yet gone. Edinburgh, Scotland's capital, the city of stone and spires, where history stands on every corner and the air itself seems heavy with stories. Our route north is a patchwork affair. First, a short ride on a rattling local bus, and a cheap train ticket that we managed to buy with what remains of our pooled coins. There's a funny moment when the ticket machine refuses one of our crumpled bills, spitting it out no matter how many times we smooth it against the side of the machine. We trade places as if one of us might magically succeed where the other fails, until finally, a kind passerby exchanges our stubborn note for a crisp one. We thank him with tired laughter, shoulders aching from our backpacks. The train hums northward, and outside the window, the English countryside unfolds in a ribbon of fields, hedgerows, and villages. Slowly, the land begins to shift, hills rising steeper, the air looking crisper even through the glass. Somewhere along the way, we cross the invisible line that marks the border into Scotland. That's it, I say softly. We're in another country without ever leaving the island. The thought feels quietly magical, like stepping into a new chapter of our journey. By the time the train slows into Edinburgh Waverley Station, the city greets us with a mixture of grandeur and grit. Stone buildings rise on every side, darkened by centuries of weather, their facades carved and stern. And towering above it all, perched on its rocky crag, looms Edinburgh Castle. It's impossible to miss. It commands the skyline, a fortress that has watched over the city for nearly 1,000 years. Even with trains arriving, taxis honking, and people hurrying past us, the castle makes everything else seem small, as though the whole city bows quietly beneath its presence. We step out onto Prince's Street, the bustle of modern shops and traffic buzzing around us, and climb our way upward until cobbled lanes replace asphalt. Soon, we find ourselves on the Royal Mile, the long sloping street that stretches from the castle gates down toward Holyrood Palace. The stones beneath our feet are uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Kings, merchants, beggars, poets, soldiers, and now, us with our backpacks creaking on our shoulders. Street musicians dot the Royal Mile, their sounds mixing with the laughter of tourists and the murmur of locals. One man plays the bagpipes, his cheeks puffed and his kilt swaying as the notes rise sharp and haunting into the autumn air. The melody echoes between the stone walls, at once proud and melancholy, and we pause to listen, coins rattling into his case with dozens of others. A little farther on, a fiddler draws quick lilting tunes that make children clap and skip in circles. It feels like the whole street is alive, you whisper, and I nod, taking it all in. The smells of roasting meat from food stalls, the bright colors of tartan scarves fluttering outside shops, the crisp bite of the Scottish wind on our faces. By mid-afternoon, hunger pulls us off the main drag into a quieter lane. There, tucked between two taller stone buildings, we find a tiny pub with a chalkboard out front, promising hearty meals, backpacker prices. It feels like a sign meant for us. Inside, the warmth of the place is instant. Wooden beams overhead, the faint smell of ale, and a fire crackling in a small hearth. We slide into a corner table, backpacks leaning heavily against the wall, and order the cheapest things we can find. Bowls of thick lentil soup with hunks of bread, and a shared plate of haggis, neeps, and tatties. When the food arrives, steaming and fragrant, we dig in with the kind of hunger only walking and budget travel can give. The soup warms us from the inside out, and the haggis, earthy, spiced, rich, is far better than its reputation. Not bad for sheep's heart and oats, I joke, and you nearly choke on your laughter. A man at the next table overhears and chuckles, raising his pint in our direction. The friendliness of the place wraps around us like a second blanket, and for a while, the world outside might as well not exist. After dinner, we wander back toward the castle, the sky shifting into shades of violet and gold. From the esplanade, the view stretches far across the city. Slate rooftops, church spires, the faint glimmer of the Firth of Forth in the distance. The wind is sharp, tugging at our clothes, but the sight holds us routed. Edinburgh feels timeless, as though its streets remember every story that has ever passed through them. And now ours is one of those countless threads. As night falls, we make our way to the hostel we've booked, a low-budget dorm just off Cowgate. The building is old, its stairwell creaking, but the receptionist greets us with a grin and points us toward a shared room filled with bunks. We slip off our boots, stowing them beneath our beds, and climb into our bunks with the kind of exhaustion that only comes from a day spent on foot. Around us, other travelers are already settling in. Someone reading by lamplight, someone else snoring softly in the corner. Lying back, I whisper, "Tomorrow we'll head out again." You nod in the bunk across from me, eyes already half closed. The sounds of the city hum faintly beyond the walls, the echo of music, the rumble of late-night voices, but within the room, a gentle stillness settles. Edinburgh, with all its stone and history, holds us in its embrace, and sleep comes easily, carrying us into dreams beneath the watchful gaze of the castle above. The morning comes quietly in Edinburgh, the air crisp and cool, carrying with it a faint promise of rain. From our bunks in the hostel dorm, we hear the stir of other travelers preparing for their own departures. Backpacks zipping, whispered conversations, the shuffle of boots on wooden floors. For us, today is our last full day in Britain, our final chance to stretch this journey into memory before tomorrow's flight carries us away. We pack lightly for this day trip, leaving our heavier gear at the hostel. The receptionist, cheerful despite the early hour, agrees to keep our bags safe behind the desk. With only day packs slung over our shoulders, we step out into the streets where the first beams of autumn sunlight scatter across cobblestones still slick with dew. A short bus ride northward soon whisks us away from the city. The buildings thin, stone giving way to green, and before long, the edges of the highlands rise before us. They are not sudden mountains, but long, rolling hills that seem to breathe beneath their coats of heather and grass. The further we go, the more the horizon expands, sky stretching wide and endless, clouds drifting low like ships across an invisible sea. When we finally step off the bus, the air is different here, cooler, sharper, tinged with peat and wild grass. There is a silence that feels alive, broken only by the calls of distant birds and the occasional rustle of wind through the hills. We walk along a narrow road, stone walls lining the fields, until the world opens into a vista so vast it takes our breath away. Before us lies a loch, its waters dark and still, mirroring the muted grays of the sky. We drop our packs and sit at the water's edge, watching the ripples form where a breeze kisses the surface. Can you believe it? I murmur. Just a week ago, we were flying over the Atlantic, and now, here, you nod, eyes scanning the hills, as though trying to carve the sight into memory. We set off on a trail that winds upward, climbing slowly over heather-clad slopes. The earth is springy beneath our boots, damp from recent rain. Every so often we pause to catch our breath and look back, the loch shrinking below us, the land stretching in soft folds toward the horizon. Sheep dot the hillsides like tiny white flecks of wool scattered across green cloth. Their bleats echo faintly, grounding the scene in a sense of quiet domesticity, even amid such grandeur. At the summit of a ridge, we stand in silence, the wind tugging at our jackets, cheeks stung with cold. From here, the highlands roll in every direction, hills upon hills, fading into mist. The sky feels impossibly wide, as though we've stepped outside of time itself. I turn to you and say, this is why people write poems about Scotland. It doesn't just look beautiful, it feels ancient. Later, we find a patch of grass sheltered by a few boulders and unpack our modest lunch. Bread bought in Edinburgh, a bit of cheese, apples rolling around in our packs. It's nothing fancy, yet it tastes rich in this setting. Every bite seasoned by the crisp air and the effort of the climb. We laugh over how the bread is slightly stale, how the cheese has sweated in its wrapper. But in the Highlands, even such a meal feels like a feast. Afterward, we wander down into a glen where a small stream tumbles over rocks, its water clear as glass. Kneeling beside it, I cup my hands and drink. The taste is shockingly pure, cold enough to numb my teeth. You know, I tell you, this water probably fell as rain hundreds of years ago, filtered slowly through rock before surfacing here. You smile, dipping your own hand into the stream, and for a moment, we feel like explorers sharing a secret with the land itself. As the afternoon wanes, the light begins to change. Clouds break open to reveal shafts of golden sun, turning the heather into fields of fire. The loch glimmers like polished metal, the hills deepening in shadow. It feels like the world is staging a farewell just for us. We sit again by the water, boots unlaced, packs at our sides. It's strange, you say softly, how quickly a place can feel like home. I nod, staring at the hills, thinking of all we've seen in just a week. London's bustle, Oxford's dreaming spires, the timber-bird houses of Stratford, the windswept ridges of the peaks, the mirrored lakes, the music of Edinburgh. Each place, distinct yet connected, has become a thread in the tapestry of this journey. As twilight falls, we make our way back toward the bus stop, lingering with every step, reluctant to leave. The ride back to Edinburgh is hushed, both of us watching the scenery darken through the windows. Lights of small villages flicker to life in the distance, and the highlands fade behind us into shadow. By the time we return to the city, night has settled fully. We collect our heavier packs from the hostel and prepare them carefully for tomorrow's flight. Straps tightened, pockets zipped, passports checked twice over. There's a strange melancholy in the act of packing, as if each folded shirt signals the end of something too brief. Before bed, we step outside one last time. From the street below, the silhouette of Edinburgh Castle looms dark against the night sky, its presence steady and eternal. Tomorrow, I whisper, we'll be in the air again, flying home. But tonight, let's promise ourselves something. I pause, meeting your eyes. This won't be our last journey. There are more roads to walk, more skies to see. You smile, the city's lamplight glinting in your gaze, and we shake on it, a pact sealed in the cool night air. Back in the dorm, lying in our bunks, the hum of the city fades into a lullaby. Beyond the walls, the world waits. Tomorrow, we will rise early, take a short ride to Edinburgh Airport, and board a plane that will carry us away. But as sleep pulls us gently under, we know this week, This backpacking pilgrimage across Britain will remain within us always, as vivid and alive as the Highlands themselves.